In this video, we will demonstrate how to use calculation factors in the PGA 3510 and MGA 6010 gas analyzers. The calculation factors are used to change the way percent carbon is calculated. You can also use the calculation factors to change certain factors in the percent carbon calculation based on properties of the furnace environment as well as the equipment itself. Okay, so if your analyzer has a color touchscreen but you are not able to find the calculation factors menu using the procedure shown in this video or in the product manual, please contact SSI at 513-772-0060. And one other thing, this video is for demonstration purposes only. For complete instructions, please refer to the official manual for your product, and you can find that on the web at www.supersystems.com. To open the calculation factors menu, we recommend first logging in as an administrator. To do this, first open the main menu, then tap Login. The default passcode for administrator is the number 2. So you can see I just entered the number 2. If your system administrator changed that code, you're going to need to use the code that is programmed into the screen. Okay, but in this case, the passcode is 2 for administrator. It is the default. So we're going to go ahead and tap OK. Now you'll see all of these other menu options show up on the touchscreen main menu. Okay, so to go ahead and get to the calculation factors, you're going to tap on the instrument setup option right there. Then you're going to tap detail. Okay, you'll see all the instrument setup options. The one you want, again, is calculation factors. So I'm going to tap on that, detail again. All right, so now all of the calculation factors will appear. Okay, it's important to understand how the options in this menu work because several of the options work in conjunction with other options. Okay, and to clarify that, let me explain a little about these options before we go into more detail on how they actually work together. Okay, so your first option, which you can see right here, is your IR factor. The IR factor is a value used by your analyzer as part of the percent carbon calculation. There are 2 types of factors that the analyzer can use. So if I tap on the IR factor and tap Edit, you can see that one factor it can use is the CO factor. Okay, this is familiar to many SSI customers because it is the factor that is used with SSI products. Okay, the other one, process factor, is less common, although it is used with some instrumentation. Okay, the second option is the IR shim factor. This is a value that is used in the calculation of the percent carbon value. Okay? So the nominal value is 180, which you can see right there. And this is important. As the number increases, the calculated percent carbon will decrease. Okay? And as this number goes down, the calculated percent carbon will go up. So there is an inverse relationship between the IR shim factor value and the calculated percent carbon that the gas analyzer is going to return. The next option you're going to see is the Ch4 factor. Okay? Basically, this determines how significant methane, or Ch4, is in computing the percent carbon. Okay? So here are some things to keep in mind. If the atmospheric gas is over 5% Ch4, the Ch4 factor should be reduced from where it is right now, which is at 20. If the gas is over 7 or 8% Ch4, the Ch4 factor can be reduced to 0, essentially. The next item in the menu is the current working IR factor. Now, this is not a value that you can actually change. Okay, so current working IR factor 180, that is what our IR shim factor is right now, and it is not meant to be changed, and it cannot be changed. Well, I should say it is meant to be changed, but it can't be changed from that option. It's just showing what the current value is. Okay. The next option is a little bit more complicated, and that one is called the Irf Adjustment Matrix, or Irf Factor Adjustment Matrix. Okay? And we will talk about that in more detail a little bit later in this video. The next option is use Irf Matrix. Now this is an important option because in order to use the Irf Adjustment Matrix, this option needs to be set to true. Okay? If the setting is false, the matrix is not going to be used. The next option in the list is the equipment-specific Irf matrices. Okay, this option builds on the Irf Adjustment Matrix by allowing you to use a different matrix for each piece of equipment that you have set up in your analyzer. Again, we're going to defer this option until later when we show you how this is actually set up and used. There are two remaining options, and they are directly related to each other. The first one is set points based on Irf Factor, which you can see on the screen right there. We'll talk about this one again a little later, but keep in mind that in order to use it, use Irf Matrix and use furnace temp for furnace set point. Both have to be set to true. Again, we'll get back to that at the end of this video. Okay. Finally, we have the option called use furnace temp for furnace set point. Okay, when this option is set to true, the analyzer will use the furnace temperature to select an IR shim factor. When this option is set to false, the analyzer will use the temperature set point to select the IR shim factor. All right, right now you can see it's true, so that means that the gas analyzer is going to use the furnace temperature to select an IR shim factor. Now that we have the basics down, let's talk about an important concept in how the analyzer calculates percent carbon. Okay. Depending on the calculation factor setup, the analyzer can use one of three methods to calculate percent carbon. These three methods can be summarized as default settings, Irf Matrix, and equipment-specific Irf matrices. Let's talk about these and show you how the menu settings are used for each one. Method number one, default settings. This is the method that's used when Irf Matrix is set to false, just like it is here. As the name suggests, it's what the analyzer does by default. Basically, it means that the analyzer uses the gas composition, the temperature, and the programmed IR shim factor and Ch4 factor to calculate percent carbon. Pretty simple. Use Irf Matrix set to false, you're using the default settings. Method number two is more complicated. Method number two is the Irf Matrix method. Okay? To use this method, first you're going to go ahead and you're going to set use Irf Matrix to true. So now that our use Irf Matrix option is set to true, we're ready to go ahead and set up our Irf Adjustment Matrix. So when I first open that menu, tap on the option Edit, you can see at the very top that there is an option for temperature only. What this means is that when this option is set to yes, the analyzer is going to use only temperature to determine when the IR factor is changed and what it is changed to. If I have it set to no, the analyzer is going to use both temperature and atmosphere. So you can see how when temp only is set to no, you have temperature limits and atmosphere limits that you use to set up your ranges. So let's go back to temperature only yes and see what we get. Okay, using this option being set to yes, you now have three temperature limits. And if you can kind of picture using these temperature limits, the analyzer is going to set up four different ranges that will be used to determine what the IR factor is going to be. So let's go ahead and set up some limits. Let's say that our first limit is 1,000. So 1,000 degrees is the lower limit of our temperature range. The second limit, let's say it's 1,400. And then let's say that the third limit is 1,800 degrees. So now we've set up our ranges. Okay, the first range is going to be up to 1,000 degrees. The second range is going to be between 1,000 and 1,400 degrees. The third range will be 1,400 degrees up to 1,800 degrees. And then the fourth and final range will be anything over 1,800 degrees. So what we need to do now that we have these ranges set up with these limits is to actually define what our IR factor is going to be. Okay, so let's say that under 1,000, let's say that based on our process, we want the IR factor under 1,000 degrees to be 140. And let's say for our second range, which is anywhere from 1,000 up to 1,400 degrees, but not including 1,400, so basically up to 1,399, we want our IR factor to be, let's say, 130. Then for our third range, which is 1,400 degrees up to 1,800 degrees, we want the factor to be 120. And then let's say for our final IR factor, which is above 1,800 degrees and including 1,800 degrees, we want our IR factor to be 110. So you can see now we have all of our limits set up, which gives us our ranges, which you can see the ranges right here. And for each of the four ranges, we have a different IR factor set up. Now, the same idea is true when you're doing atmosphere. So if we set temp only to no, suddenly we get atmosphere values that come in. And from there, we have the ability to set atmosphere limits. Now that we're using both temperature and atmosphere, instead of having 4 ranges with temperature, we have 16 ranges total when we're using both atmosphere and temperature to define the ranges for the IR factor in this matrix. So if you counted up all of these ranges, you're going to see that there are a total of 16 of them if you were to physically count all of them up. So at that point, let's just say we've finished the setup. We're going to return. We have our IR adjustment matrix set up. Method number 3, equipment-specific IRF matrices. This method is similar to the IRF matrix method in that the analyzer will change the IR shim factor based on atmosphere and temperature ranges that you program in. However, the equipment-specific method allows you to configure a different set of ranges for each piece of equipment that you have set up in the analyzer. And that's the key point. You can set up IR matrices for different pieces of equipment that you have set up on your gas analyzer. In order to do this, you're first going to need to have some equipment set up in the analyzer database. So in order to do that, we need to go back a couple of menus. So we're back in the main menu. We're still logged in as administrator. We click on Tools, tap Detail, and from there we select Database Maintenance, Edit, and you're going to see a list of different options in here. The two that we are concerned about are Maintain Equipment Types and Maintain Equipment. So in order to set up pieces of equipment, we got to have equipment types. So you can see we already have these types in here. You can add different ones, but we're just going to go with the ones that we have in here right now. Now, Maintain Equipment is where we're going to go ahead and add our different pieces of equipment. So at this point we have 3 pieces of equipment defined, and we can define more, but we're just going to define 3 for now. just to demonstrate. So now we have our equipment defined. Once all of our equipment is set up, we're going to go back to the calculation factors menu. So here we are back at the main menu. We're going to go to instrument setup, calculation factors, and at this point we want to go ahead and set up our equipment specific Irf matrices. I select a piece of equipment, and then at this point I go ahead and set up the values just as I did for the Irf matrix before, but in this case it's going to be based on a specific piece of equipment, which in this case is bell furnace 1. Now that we've gotten our equipment matrices set up, you might be asking, well, how do I use them? The answer is that you use them right before you start a session with your analyzer. So using the equipment specific Irf matrices is directly tied to running a session on your gas analyzer. Now let's show you what we mean by that. So if you go back to the main menu, you're going to open the Sessions menu. So Sessions, Detail. The Sessions menu will show up, and let's go ahead and select Bell Furnace 1. And this is really important. You need to check the Use Equipment Specific Irf Matrix box right there. So now that that box is checked and selected, when you run your session, it's going to be using the equipment specific Irf matrix connected to Bell Furnace 1 that we set up in the calculation factors menu. So the last option that we need to take a look at is set points based on Irf Factor. And again, this is an option that is available in the calculation factors menu, and basically what it does is that it causes the analyzer to change set points in an effort to reach an IR factor that you've configured in the Irf Adjustment Matrix. So let me just give you an example. Okay, so you can see all of these ranges set up in this Irf matrix. By selecting this range, the analyzer is going to set points for atmosphere and temperature that are in this range to try to get the IR factor to be set to 110. So what I do is I select that range, select input, and then as soon as I do that, the analyzer is going to change the set points to try to reach that IR factor that you've set up in the Irf Adjustment Matrix. And there's how to use the calculation factors on the MGA 6010 and PGA 3510. If you have any questions after watching this video and reading the manual, call SSI at 513-772-0060. Thanks for watching.